Arith, we have JLA 80-page giant from 1998. This is like an annual, but without a main story. DC did a lot of these for a few years. I've got a dozen of them. I thought it would be good to take a look at one because there is some variety in here. You don't like one story? That's fine. There's a new one starting in about 10 pages time. We have Martian Mind Fucker on the cover, and we have more on the left. Batman, Wonder Woman, The Vision, also starring Superman, Martian Mind Fucker, we already knew that, Green Lanterns, Acroman, Ara and Canary, Stephen Orkman, Blue Beagle and Booster Gold. His name is covered by my thumb. Plus, scores of supervillains. We have 7 stories in here, each 10 to 11 pages long, and each by different creative teams. A couple featuring different periods of Justice League history. Our first one is by John Ostrich, The Green Bullet, and it primarily stars Batman and I suppose Superman. John Ostrich did around this time write a Justice League series of similar style, JLA Incarnations. It was 7 or 8 issues, and every issue was a standalone story set in a different era of Justice League. You had your Van Morrison team at the end. You had your International. You even had a whole issue devoted to Justice League Detroit, or as I call them, Justice League Detritus. Stick that up your vibe and steal it. This story is, if you could switch your brain off, okay. There's a part of it that makes 0 sense, and it is pretty much the main plot point. There has been a murder in Gotham City, and it looks like Superman could be the culprit. The bullet used to kill the victim was made of cryptocurrency, so Superman is the primary suspect. It makes no sense because why would Superman kill someone with a bullet made of Superman's fatal weakness? How did he fashion it into a bullet, for starters? He would have had to handle crypto himself. And we all know Superman doesn't deal with crypto. If it wasn't for that, it's an alright story. It's a piece about Batman exploring if he truly believes Superman is incorruptible, if Superman is an infallible god on Earth, or if Superman is as weak as us humans. And if Superman is guilty, then Batman will treat him like any other criminal. He doesn't believe Superman's claims of innocence just because they are familiar with each other. It's a good story if you can get over that dumb thing. There is actually, one of the Incarnations issues is a similar thing. It's maybe the best issue of Incarnations. It's about Batman and Superman and how both the least powerful and most powerful hero can be valued parts of the League. Obviously, Superman didn't do it. It was all a frame job by Lenny Luthor. he tried to frame Superman, and he did a bad job of it. Why would Superman use crypto, you slaphead? We have a great scene here to make up for the bad plotting. Batman confronts Lenny Luthor, and Lenny Luthor is like, yeah, you and what army? And then we have the rest of the League waiting outside. This is before that comic, actually. I would have thought this was a reference to it, but it might remind you of that bit in a Van Morrison story that came out 2 years after this. Is Van Morrison a thief and a plagiarist? Probably not. Next, we have a tale featuring the late 60s, early 70s version of the League. This is written by Tennessee, Martin Quaid's lackey, and this is a very thin story. It's a very basic story. Well, all of them are. But this one felt like it was light, even for the page count. We have a rich guy who wants to give the Justice League money. And he seems to be on the up and up, but naturally, Ara scoffs at this. He doesn't want to be in the pocket of some fat cat tycoon sleazebag. And so Martian Mindfucker proposes that he reads this guy's mind to determine if he has any ulterior motives. And Martian Mindfucker does that, and he cannot find anything. So then the Justice League, without Ara, they accept the check for $1 billion. Ara's hatred for the rich and the wealthy, and his politics, of course, these all trace back to Neil O'Dennis and Adam Neils with their Green Lanterns and Ara team-up book. And now, here is some outside input from Cyborg Raging 15-year-olds. Alida Kwan as a Sparstock, and the Anle Alida Kwan Starry Wat Redden as the Mark Groll Starries were Alida Kwan shits the black scam. Ara is a butthead who won't accept that he is ever wrong. A bit like a cybernetic Irish boy in a sense. So he starts psychologically torturing this billionaire, trying to get him to crack and reveal his true reason for giving the League money. It doesn't work, but that isn't important because it doesn't take long for the guy to show his true colours anyway, when he tries to use the Justice League as his own personal muscle to intimidate a foreign general into agreeing to a business proposal. So, in the end, Ara was right, and we shouldn't ever trust rich people. The second worst story in here is the expected Justice League International reunion. Keith Magoo's art looks great, but this is the worst part of Justice League International. It's also only by Kevin Giffen, no Jim Tomatoes. Justice League International was the big, late 80s revamp of Justice League, and you really don't need me to tell you about this. The thing that made it stand out was that it would have the team and its members often be the source of comedy. After about 25 issues, it became just the comedy. and a lot of what worked about it was gone. The comedy wasn't breaking up any tension now. It wasn't comic relief anymore. It was the main thing the book was doing. And whenever anyone revisits that time or that team, and its creators have done so many, 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 many times, it's always with the false impression that the book was always purely comedy, when most of the first 2 years had traditional superhero plots which were broken up or brought down to earth with some comedic interactions between the team. I think that is the best I have ever described my problem with Justice League International. This is flippin' terrible. It is 10 pages as well. Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, they are trying to trap a mouse, and that is the extent of plot. Canary looks wonderful, and they are doing that crap gag with Gary Gardner hitting his head and becoming soft, which doesn't even make sense here, because Canary is there, meaning that this is either before or during the first instance of that happening to him in that run. If only this were the worst story in here, but it's not. They save the worst for last. And our next one is maybe our best one. This is a Vision story, a solo story with the Vision, and it's also an unofficial prologue to Young Justice League. It's a bit of a shame that this stray anthology story isn't included in the Young Justice League collections, because it does feel super relevant to the beginning of that series. The Vision is a Bronze Age and 80s character that was very present in Justice League during those years. He was dismantled and destroyed in Christmas on Infinite Earths. Then he made a return a decade later in the aftermath of 0 Hours Christmas in Time. But one thing that they never really accounted for, one thing that had fallen to the wayside, was his hard setup and his hard love interest. The Vision, he was resurrected with a factory reset. His memories, or at least his emotional connection to them, was gone. This is great though, because it is reopening the door, but not readmitting the stuff from the past. I don't think that the Vision is a great character, even less so than the Marvel character. But I don't have to love the character to recognise this story is doing its surprising best to bring back into focus and acknowledge parts of this character that had been severely overlooked in his revival and his absence before that. It ends with him in a sad state. He gans to the Yard Justice League mountain base to power down because he feels unwanted and disconnected from the world around him. So he has gone to surround himself with the past because he has nowhere else to go. The Young Justice League, Trinity, will camp out in that base in their first issue, and they will reactivate or catch the attention of the Vision, who will then become the mentor to that team and their chaperone. He will be their direct tie to the actual Justice League. Next story is by Mac Millar, and I was convinced this was going to be the best one until we reached the end. With the Justice League announcing their return, the villain, Brian Wave, a Stir-Fry Squadron villain, he goes about forming a big, bad, new version of the Victoria's Secret Society of supervillains. And we have loads of Son of Capwolf approved cameos of villains, but the Toilet Brush Gang are never welcome. Hate them. Here we go, a big convention of villains. There's some major ones in there, like Mr. Grumpy, Scaredy Cat, the Rizzler, Sexy Ivy, Plant Man. And I was thinking, oh God, I cannot wait to see this army of bad guys do stuff. But I should have realised it is a 10-page story. So of course, there's going to be some way out of it. Brian Wave was Martian Mindfucker in disguise. The whole thing was a ploy to get the League's enemies together so that they could be easy pickings. Very disappointed with that ending. This obviously ties in with Van Morrison's run on Justice League, which was concurrent with this release. And Mac Millar did have his fingers in a lot of supplementary pie during Van Morrison's run. It was back when they were still friends, before Van Morrison wanted to run Mac Millar over with a car. I know there's a few issues Mac Millar wrote, the Super Adaptoid one. He does some stuff in Secret Files and Origins. There's the Archangel miniseries, that was Mac Millar. And there's Aspen, that was Van Morrison and Mac Millar. I was expecting more from this short story because of his connection to the main series and its writer. Jupiter's Legacy is apparently Mac Millar's piece about the falling out with Van Morrison. I've never read it, but maybe if Mac Millar wrote more works like that which are reflective or symbolic or even just personal, maybe Van Morrison wouldn't want to run him over with a car. Our next story is by Elliot Maggin. Such a big name in DC history that outside of saying the word Superman, I don't know how else to sum up his career. Is a name you would see almost everywhere in ad DC books. I really don't know where to begin. This story is interesting to see a veteran writer like that do summer in the 90s. And it also stars a modern character, or a modern version of a character, the Kyle Reese Green Lanterns. I respect that Elliot Maggin is willing to play with a toy that I assume he is not too invested in. The story itself is okay. It doesn't have enough urgency or conflict, but it's readable, which is what I cannot say about what comes next. After the Green Lantern story, we have a Wonder Woman and Acroman tale by Topher Proust. It is the only one that I didn't finish. I think I got to, I believe it is this page, And I realised he was writing Acroman just like he writes Black Panther. Unlikable. He is a smug royal king who hates everyone except himself. He talks down to everything. He thinks that he is smarter than everyone else. He believes that he is superior and supreme. The other 6 stories have their bits of appeal, either in an idea presented or in the artwork. The last one is a horrible dessert to an uneven meal. For most people, I would say there is at least one story out of 7 you will appreciate in here. Dear God, I hope it is not that last one. I'll give this 7 stories up.